Warm welcome, audience. What's time there from where you watching it? Now sit close, for this is where the legend begins in the smoke and ruin of Troy, beneath the fading light of a decade-long war. The walls of the once great city trembled beneath the cries of men and the crackle of fire. The Greeks had finally triumphed, not by might, but by cunning. A wooden horse, silent and hollow, carried warriors in its belly, and that deception ended the might of Priam's kingdom. Among those cunning warriors stood Odysseus, king of Ithaca, whose mind was as sharp as the edge of Achilles' spear. He watched the city burn, the red glow reflecting in his weary eyes, his heart heavy with both victory and guilt. The wind that night whispered of home, of Penelope's patience, of Telemachus, the son who barely knew his father. For 10 long years, Odysseus had fought beside heroes and monsters, kings and cowards. Yet as dawn broke over the ashes of Troy, he felt the weight of another war, the war of return, the struggle against fate itself. For the gods had not forgotten him, and some had not forgiven him. Athena, his divine guide, loved his cleverness, but Poseidon, lord of the seas, brooded over an old insult yet to come. As the Greeks prepared to sail home, Odysseus gathered his men. They were tired, scarred, but eager for the green hills of Ithaca. He stood before them on the shore, his voice rising above the crash of waves. "Brothers," he said, "our battle is done, but our journey is not. The gods have given us wind. May they also give us mercy." The men cheered, raising their oars to the heavens, not knowing the sea would soon turn against them. When the first sails caught the wind, the ocean seemed calm, like glass stretching to infinity. Seagulls followed the fleet, crying over the foam, and Odysseus felt the stir of hope. He dreamed of Penelope weaving by the fire, of his father Lars tending the fields of peace. But the gods above Olympus watched with divided hearts. Athena whispered blessings into the wind, but Poseidon's trident stirred beneath the waves, plotting storms not yet born. As night fell, the fleet anchored near a small island. Fires burned, songs rose, songs of home, of heroes fallen, of a world finally at peace. Odysseus sat apart, staring at the stars. His heart, though strong, was restless. He had learned that every victory in war left a shadow, and he feared what lay beyond the horizon. The air turned heavy, the sea murmured dark omens. He closed his eyes, praying softly to Athena for guidance. In the distance, unseen, Poseidon's rage swelled like a coming storm. The god had watched his temples burn at Troy, had seen Greeks mock his name. He remembered the fate of his son, the Cyclops, yet to meet Odysseus. Fate was already weaving its web, one that even Athena could not easily undo. By morning, the skies turned grey. Waves slapped the ships, winds howled warnings. Odysseus stood at the prow, gripping his sword, shouting to his men, "Hold steady, the sea tests us." Lightning split the heavens, rain slashed down, and the fleet scattered like leaves in a tempest. The voice of Poseidon thundered across the waves. "So you think to defy the sea, mortal? You shall wander it until despair becomes your name." The men screamed prayers, ships cracked and vanished. The ocean swallowed everything. When the storm ended, silence ruled. The sun rose pale and cold. Odysseus's ship alone had survived, broken but afloat. His men clung to the deck, shivering, half dead. He looked around at the endless horizon, no land, no sail, only the haunting breath of the gods. The curse had begun. Days passed. Hunger gnawed at them, thirst burned their throats. Then, like a mirage, an island appeared, green, fragrant, and alive. They rowed toward it, desperate. Odysseus, ever cautious, warned his men the gods rarely gift without a price. Keep your wits, for beauty hides many. Thanks. But men weary of suffering rarely heed wisdom. They rushed ashore laughing, kissing the sand. The island seemed blessed, fruit hung heavy from trees, streams sang softly, and birds filled the air. Yet beneath that sweetness lurked enchantment. In the shadows unseen, a goddess watched them. Her name was Calypso, the one who kept immortality in her gaze and loneliness in her heart. Fate would bring Odysseus to her in time, but not yet, for the island was not Calypso's. It was Ismarus, land of the Chacones, a people fierce and proud. The Greeks, still blinded by arrogance, raided their city, taking gold and slaves. Odysseus begged restraint, but his words fell on deaf ears. At dawn, vengeance came. The Chacones gathered allies and struck back. Spears rained, blood flowed. Odysseus fought like a lion, but the cost was heavy. Many of his men fell before they could flee to their ships, as they pushed off from the shore. Odysseus cried to the gods for forgiveness, but the sea only roared louder. His men mourned their dead, their hearts heavy with guilt. The wind shifted once again, sending them toward darker fates. Days later, they reached another shore, calm, silent, and strangely sweet in scent. The land of the Lotus Eaters, a place where memory faded and time slept. The men who ate of the lotus forgot their homes, their names, their very selves. Odysseus, brave and fierce, dragged them back by force, tying them to the ship's benches. No man forgets Ithaca while I live, he swore. The sea carried them onward, but now whispers haunted the waves, whispers of giants, monsters. And which is ahead? The journey had begun not as a voyage, but as a trial, one that would carve Odysseus into legend. Behind him, Troy's ashes, before him, 1,000 perils, and above him, the eyes of gods who could not decide whether to bless him or destroy him. So ends the first chapter of his Odyssey, not in triumph, but in the trembling heartbeat of survival. The ship glided across restless waters, its sails swollen by the moaning wind. The men sat silent, trembling from both victory and fear. The taste of danger still clung to their tongues. The sound of the Cyclops' screams still echoed in their ears. The sea stretched endless and grey, and though they had escaped the cave, none among them felt truly free. Odysseus stood at the prow, his cloak torn, his eyes burning with thought. He had won through cunning, yet pride had betrayed him. His voice to the giant had not gone unheard, and now the sea itself seemed to breathe with vengeance. The waves rose and fell like a living thing, whispering the name of Poseidon. Days passed and hunger gnawed once more. The men's faces grew hollow, their spirits low. Then, on the horizon, land appeared, a green island crowned by shimmering clouds. The air smelled of rain and honey, and the sound of wind whistled in strange patterns, almost as if alive. The sailors rowed toward it eagerly, and Odysseus, though cautious, allowed it. His heart longed for any sign that the gods had forgiven them, though deep inside he knew forgiveness was not so easily given. They landed upon a golden shore, where cliffs sparkled like polished stone and the breeze hummed soft as song. They climbed a winding path that led to a vast bronze palace whose walls shone like the setting sun. At its gates stood guards of air, shapes that moved like men but had no flesh, only shifting clouds. The gates opened without touch, and a voice called out from within, deep and kind. "Enter, strangers. You are welcome here." Inside sat Aeolus, lord of the winds, crowned with silver feathers and cloaked in whispering gusts. Around him danced his 6 sons and 6 daughters, spirits of the breeze, playing with ribbons of air. Odysseus bowed low, his voice steady. "Great master of the air, we come from Troy, lost and punished by sea. Grant us the mercy of your Aeolus smiled. Odysseus of Ithaca, your name is known even to the clouds. I shall aid you, for the gods' feud is not mine." He feasted them for days in warmth and joy, his hall echoing with laughter and song. For the first time in many moons, the men felt peace. When Odysseus prepared to leave, Aeolus brought forth a great ox-hide bag tied with silver cords. "Here," he said, "I have trapped every storm, every cruel wind, except the west wind that will carry you home. Guard this well, and you shall see Ithaca soon." Odysseus thanked him, swore to protect it, and took the bag aboard. For 9 days they sailed without trouble. The seas were calm, the skies kind, and the scent of their homeland drifted faintly in the breeze. Ithaca was near, so near they could see its mountains glitter beneath the moonlight. But fate is cruel to men who grow careless. While Odysseus slept, his men whispered among themselves. They saw the heavy bag, its silver cords shining. "What treasure does our captain hide from us?" they muttered. "Gold stolen from the gods? Riches he means to keep." Greed poisoned their hearts. As Odysseus dreamed of Penelope's face, they untied the bag. The sky screamed. Winds burst forth like wild beasts, roaring, twisting, tearing the sails apart. The sea rose in fury, tossing the ship like a leaf. The men cried out, clinging to ropes and broken planks. Odysseus woke to chaos, his gift undone, his home ripped from sight. "Fools!" he shouted, but his voice was lost to the wind. The storm drove them backward, far from Ithaca, until once again they were strangers to the world. When dawn came, the ship drifted back to Aeolus' island. Weary and drenched, Odysseus climbed the shining hill once more. Aeolus saw him and turned away, his face hard as stone. "Begone," he said. "No man cursed by the gods shall have my favor twice. The sea itself rejects you, Odysseus." The gates closed and the winds grew cold. They sailed on in despair, their hearts heavy as anchors. Food dwindled, hope faded. Each man stared at the horizon with hollow eyes. The sun burned cruelly, the water mocked their thirst. Then, as twilight fell, they sighted another shore, dark, forested and still. Smoke rose from its heart, and birds wheeled in the sky. Odysseus watched it, uncertain. "Perhaps fortune turns again," he murmured, though doubt weighed every word. They landed upon the black sand. The forest was dense, its air thick with strange scents, flowers that glowed faintly, trees that whispered in unknown tongues. The men explored, cautious at first, but the sound of singing soon drew them deeper. It was soft, golden and sweet, a woman's voice woven with enchantment. They followed it as though bewitched, disappearing among the trees. Odysseus waited by the shore, his instincts uneasy. When hours passed and none returned, he took up his sword and ventured inward. He found a clearing where stood a great house of stone, surrounded by lions and wolves, but these beasts did not attack. They wagged their tails like tamed hounds, their eyes strange and human. Inside, the air shimmered with perfume. A woman of radiant beauty sat upon a throne, her hair like molten gold, her eyes dark as deep water. "Circe, daughter of the sun." She greeted him with a smile that could melt steel. "Why linger at the door, traveler? Enter and rest. No harm shall come to you." Her voice was a melody, and though Odysseus's heart stirred, his reason whispered warning. "Many have entered this hall," he said, "and few return." She laughed softly. Perhaps they did not wish to leave. Her servants brought food and wine, but Odysseus, wary, did not drink. Then came his lost men, transformed, not as humans, but as pigs squealing in despair. Circe touched them with her wand, smiling. "They feasted at my table without manners. Now they wallow as they deserve." Odysseus drew his blade, the bronze flashing. "Undo your spell, goddess, or taste the wrath of a man who has defied death itself." But Circe saw the herb he carried, the holy moly given by Hermes, who had appeared to him upon the path. Her eyes widened, for no mortal should have survived her magic. Slowly, she lowered her wand. "You are no ordinary man," she said. "You are Odysseus." He nodded. "Then prove your mercy." And so she did. The spell broke. The men returned to their forms, trembling, bewildered. Circe, now gentle, offered them rest. For a year they stayed, feasting and forgetting. But time moves differently on enchanted islands. Only when the stars shifted and dreams of home returned did Odysseus remember his purpose. He went to Circe and said, "My heart belongs to Ithaca. Tell me the way." Her gaze turned sorrowful. "You must first descend into the realm of the dead and speak with Tiresias, the blind prophet. Only he can show you your path." Her words chilled him, but his destiny gave no choice. He gathered his men, left the golden halls behind, and set sail toward darkness, toward the mouth of Hades, where mortal light dies and the souls of heroes whisper to the living. The wind carried them onward, and the sea turned black beneath their ship. Behind them, Circe watched in silence, her eyes full of secrets and sorrow. Ahead lay shadows that no man had ever faced and returned whole. The sea grew colder as they sailed, darker than night itself. No stars shone, and even the moon seemed afraid to look down upon the path they followed. The men rode in silence, their faces pale as ghosts, their hearts heavy with dread. The waves made no sound now, only the creaking of wood and the whisper of oars. Odysseus stood at the prow, eyes fixed upon the horizon that was not a horizon at all, but a void. He knew they were nearing the edge of the living world, where day surrendered to eternal twilight. Circe's warning echoed in his mind. To reach home, you must seek the counsel of the dead. At last, They came upon a shore barren and cold. No trees grew there, no wind stirred. The sand was grey, and mist coiled over the ground like breath from the underworld. Odysseus stepped onto the earth, feeling it tremble beneath his feet. Around him the men trembled. Is this truly where the dead dwell? One whispered. Odysseus only nodded, his jaw tight. Here lies the shadow realm. Keep courage, for only through it may we find the way to the sun again. He took his sword and dug a pit in the earth, as Circe had taught him. Into it he poured milk and honey, wine and water, sprinkling barley as offering to the restless souls. Then he drew his blade and whispered prayers to the shades below, to the nameless dead, to Persephone, to Hades himself. When the blood of the sacrifice touched the ground, the mist stirred. The air grew thick with whispers, countless voices, sighing, crying, calling his name. From the darkness they came, pale shapes drifting like smoke, faces hollow, eyes empty. The men screamed and drew back, but Odysseus stood firm, though his skin crawled with terror. Among them came a figure he knew, tall, noble, and sorrowful. Achilles, the great hero, shining faintly even in death. His voice was soft as wind through reeds. Odysseus, you who live, what brings you to this shadowed place? Odysseus bowed his head. I seek the counsel of Tyre, that I may find my way home. Achilles' eyes darkened. Then learn from me, mortal, no glory in life is worth the cold of this land. Better to be a slave among the living than a king among the dead. His words cut deep. The mist swallowed him again. Then came another shade, frail and trembling, the ghost of Elpner, one of Odysseus's men, who had fallen from Circe's roof and died unburied. His voice wailed like the wind. Master, remember me. Do not leave my soul wandering. Burn my body. Raise a mound and carve my name, that I may rest. Odysseus swore it, tears stinging his eyes. I will not forget you, my friend. Finally, from the black fog rose the spirit he sought, Tyre, the blind prophet, holding his golden staff. His empty eyes glowed with knowing. Odysseus, he said, why have you disturbed the sleep of the dead to seek the path home? Odysseus replied, for the sea defies me and the gods are cruel. Tiresias's mouth curled into a shadowed smile. Cruel? No, only just. You blinded the son of Poseidon, and now his father hunts you. Your journey will be long, your losses many. Yet if you restrain your heart and heed my words, you may still see Ithaca. He leaned closer, his voice like the hiss of serpents. Beware the island of the sun, where Helios's cattle graze. Touch them not, though hunger gnaws your bones, for if you do, destruction will find you. Your men will perish, and you alone will return, cast upon strange shores, a broken man. And when at last you reach your home, there you shall find suitors devouring your wealth, wooing your wife. But fear not, your cunning shall yet triumph. Only after blood and tears will peace return. The prophet's voice faded, and the shadows closed around him. Then came one more presence, a softer one, familiar. Odysseus turned and felt his heart shatter. It was his mother, Anticle, pale as moonlight. Mother, he whispered, what has brought you here? She smiled sadly. Your absence, my son. Grief took me when word of you never came. But speak no sorrow, live, and return to her who still waits. Odysseus reached out, but his hands passed through her like mist. The chill of that moment clung to him forever. Around him the dead wailed louder, reaching, hungering for life enough. He cried, let me go. He ran toward the shore, the ghosts chasing him until he leapt aboard the ship. His men rowed with all their might, the oars cutting through black water. Behind them, the land of the dead faded into shadow, swallowed by the mist. For a long time, none spoke. The men's faces were pale, their eyes hollow. Odysseus stood silent, staring into the endless, dark sea. He had looked upon death, and death had looked back. Yet from that horror came knowledge. The path home was clear, though fraught with peril. He had seen what awaited him, loss, pain, and the wrath of the gods. Still, he would not turn away, for a man who had crossed into the underworld had nothing left to fear but the gods themselves. The wind rose, soft at first, then steady. The black clouds began to part, and a faint glow touched the horizon, the first true light they had seen in many days. The ship turned toward it, and the men felt warmth again upon their faces. Somewhere far behind, the dead sank into silence. Ahead lay new islands, new trials, the song of sirens, the wrath of monsters, and the long road still stretching between Odysseus and his home. The sea shimmered once more beneath the pale light of dawn, as if the world itself was breathing again after the chill of death. The waves were no longer black but blue and alive, curling softly beneath the ship's wooden hull. Yet none among the men dared to smile. They had seen what no living man should see, the faces of the dead, the whisper of lost souls still clinging to their hearts. Odysseus stood at the bow, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The world of the living stretched before him again, but the shadow of prophecy clung to his thoughts like mist. He knew now what awaited them: danger, temptation, and the thin line between survival and ruin. Days passed, and the winds turned gentle, guiding them toward a vast expanse of calm sea where sunlight danced like gold. It seemed too peaceful, too kind, and Odysseus, wise as ever, felt unease stirring in his chest. The air itself was different, sweet, heavy, humming softly like a voice not quite human. He ordered his men to lower the sails and prepare the oars. "There is danger here," he said, quietly, "not of storm or sword, but of song." The men looked confused until a faint melody drifted over the waves, distant, haunting, more beautiful than anything mortal. It was music that promised comfort, love, and peace. It whispered of lost mothers, of wives waiting, of all things the heart longs for. The men's eyes glazed over. Their hands slackened on the oars. "Home," one murmured dreamily. "She calls us home." Odysseus's blood ran cold. He remembered Tiresias's warning and Circe's counsel. Beware the sirens, whose voices drown the reason of men. Quickly, he took beeswax from the ship's stores and softened it over a flame. "Here," he said, "plug your ears with this and row on. Whatever you hear, no matter how sweet, do not listen." They obeyed, though fear glittered in their eyes. As for himself, Odysseus had another plan. He ordered his men to lash him tightly to the mast. "Bind me fast, and no matter what I say, do not release me until the song has faded." They hesitated, but his voice brooked no argument. Bound by ropes, he stood like a statue, his eyes fixed upon the glittering horizon. Then the song grew clearer. The wind carried it closer, voices of impossible beauty, rising and falling like waves. They sang of knowledge, of love, of rest after endless wandering. They sang his name, Odysseus. They whispered, "Come to us. We know your heart. We can end your pain. The sea need not take you any farther. Come and see." His heart thundered. His mind filled with their melody until he could no longer think. He strained against the ropes, shouting to be freed, commanding, begging, pleading. The men rowed on, deaf and blind to his cries. The voices rose, sweet as honey, sharp as grief, until suddenly they stopped. Silence fell like a sword. Odysseus hung limp against the mast, sweat running down his face. The ropes had cut into his skin, but his eyes were clear again. The danger had passed. Behind them, the Sirens' Island faded into mist, littered with the bones of those who had listened too long. But the sea had more tests waiting. Soon the calm waters began to churn, and the sound of thunder echoed without clouds. Ahead, smoke rose from a narrow strait between two jagged cliffs. Circe's warning returned to his mind: sail between Scylla and Charybdis, the monster, and the whirlpool. Choose the lesser death. He gathered his men and spoke quietly. Ahead lies a passage where no ship passes unscarred. On one side waits Charybdis, who swallows the sea itself and spits it out again. On the other side lurks Scylla, six-headed and hungry for men. Keep to her side, though some will die, for to face Charybdis is to lose all. The men stared in terror, but they trusted him still. They rowed forward, hearts pounding, the cliffs closing in like jaws. The roar of Charybdis filled the air, a monstrous sucking sound that dragged the sea into a spiraling pit. The ship trembled. The men could barely hold their oars. "Steady!" Odysseus shouted. "Row hard! Hug the rocks, but not too close." The air grew thick with mist. Waves rose high, crashing over them. Then came the scream, shrill. piercing, inhuman. From the shadows above, Scylla struck. 6 long necks darted down like serpents, each seizing a man from the deck. The air filled with cries of horror as the monsters' heads withdrew, dragging the victims upward into her cave. Odysseus watched, helpless, his sword useless against the creature of the gods. He shouted their names, but only echoes answered. When the sea calmed again, silence fell heavy. 6 oars hung empty. The survivors rowed on, their faces hollow, their hearts broken. Odysseus sat still, his eyes hard with grief. Their deaths were not in vain. He whispered, "They gave us the sea's mercy, if such a thing exists." The ship drifted onward, past the cliffs, into quieter waters, but peace no longer meant safety. The prophecy weighed upon them all. The island of the sun still ahead, where one mistake would doom them forever. The men slept uneasily that night, haunted by the faces of their lost brothers, and Odysseus stared into the dark, feeling the gods' gaze heavy upon him. The stars glittered cold and indifferent above. The wind murmured softly, as if mocking the prayers of mortal men. Somewhere beyond the horizon lay Ithaca, close, yet impossibly far. Between him and home still waited the wrath of Helios, the loss of his crew, the loneliness of the sea, and the years that would turn his name from warrior to wanderer, from king to legend. He closed his eyes and for the first time in many nights dreamed not of battle or gods, but of Penelope's weaving hands and the laughter of a child he barely remembered. The sea rocked him like a cradle, gentle, deceitful, eternal. The morning came bright and treacherous. The sea was calm, the sky pure, and yet an uneasy silence hung over the men. Their oars dipped softly into the water, breaking the stillness with hollow rhythm. They were weary, starved, and haunted by the faces of their lost brothers taken by Scylla's jaws. Odysseus stood at the prow, his face hardened by grief, but his eyes still blazing with purpose. He had escaped storms, monsters, and the very gates of the dead, yet he knew the gods had not finished testing him. The air grew heavy as the wind shifted, bringing with it the faint scent of grass and sunlight. Ahead stretched a beautiful island, green and golden beneath the sky. Birds circled its shores, streams glittered down its cliffs. It was the island of Phrynicia, sacred land of Helios, the sun god. Circe's voice echoed in his memory. "Avoid that island, Odysseus. There graze the cattle of the sun. Touch them not, for destruction waits for those who harm what belongs to the divine." He called his men together, his voice strong though his heart trembled. "Brothers, remember what the prophet warned. Whatever hunger gnaws at us, we must not set foot upon that island. The herds of Helios are sacred. To slay them is to invite ruin." But the men were desperate. Their bodies were thin, their eyes sunken, and the thought of land, of food and rest, was too great a temptation. Eurylochus, ever bold in voice but weak in faith, stepped forward. "We face death on every wave, Odysseus. Will you have us perish at sea when there's land before our eyes? Let us rest there, if only for a night. Surely the gods will not begrudge us that." Odysseus hesitated. The men watched him with pleading eyes. He felt the weight of leadership, the curse of knowing that mercy and doom often walked hand in hand. At last he nodded. "Very well." He said quietly, "We will land, but swear to me, by every god above, that you will not touch the cattle." They swore it, their hands raised to the sky, and the ship glided toward the shore. The island was a paradise. The air smelled of flowers and ripe fruit. The grass shone gold beneath the sun. Streams of cool water flowed between tall trees, and herds of radiant cattle grazed nearby, their hides gleaming as if woven from light itself. The men gazed in awe but turned their eyes away, remembering their oath. Days passed in uneasy peace. They built shelters from branches, fished the sea, and prayed for a wind to carry them home. But the wind did not come. Day after day, the air lay still, the ship unmoving. Hunger crept upon them again, fierce and cruel. Their stores dwindled, their bellies ached, and despair began to whisper in their ears. One night, as Odysseus prayed alone to the gods, Eurylochus gathered the others by the fire. "What sense is there in dying by hunger?" he said bitterly. "Better to offend the sun once than perish for nothing. If the gods wish to strike us down, let them, but at least we'll die with full bellies." The others hesitated, torn between fear and need. At last hunger triumphed over faith. They went into the fields where Helios's cattle slept under the moon. With trembling hands they drew their blades. The beasts neither fled nor cried. They only turned their shining eyes toward the men, as though knowing what would come. When dawn rose, the air was thick with the scent of burning fat and roasted flesh. Odysseus returned to the camp and saw the smoke rising. His heart stopped. He shouted in horror, but it was too late. The men feasted greedily, laughing, weeping, blessing the gods who would soon curse them. The heavens grew dark. The sun, bright and furious, halted in its path, far above. Helios cried out to Olympus, Father Zeus, "See what they have done, my sacred cattle, slaughtered by mortal hands. Grant me justice, or I shall shine no more upon the world." Zeus heard, and his anger was swift. He swore vengeance by his own thunderbolt. For 6 days the men ate and drank, rejoicing in their false fortune. Then the sky began to change. Clouds gathered without wind, thunder rumbled without storm. The air turned heavy as lead. Odysseus ordered the ship prepared, hoping to flee the wrath that he felt burning in the heavens. They pushed off from the shore, but the sea had turned against them. A great black wall of storm rose on every side, and lightning shattered the sky. The mast splintered, the ropes snapped, and waves crashed over the deck. The men screamed as the ship broke apart beneath them. Then came Zeus's strike, a blinding flash, a roar that split the heavens. The sea exploded into white fire. When the storm cleared, the ship was gone, the men swallowed by the waves, their cries fading into the depths. Odysseus alone clung to a fragment of the mast, tossed upon the endless water. He called their names, but only silence answered. The sea was empty, vast and pitiless. For 9 days he drifted, carried by winds he could not command. Hunger and sorrow were his only companions. At last, the waves brought him to the shores of Ogygia, a place untouched by man. The island was green and fragrant, full of birds and gentle springs. And there, among the cypress trees, lived Calypso, the immortal nymph whose beauty shamed the dawn itself. She found him half dead. Upon the rocks, his skin salt-burned and his eyes hollow with loss. She took him into her cave, where the air smelled of cedar and immortality. When he woke, she was beside him, her hair flowing like night, her eyes bright as the sea. "Rest, Odysseus," she said softly. "You have suffered enough. Stay here with me. I will make you forget your pain." But he turned away, though his heart was weary. "I cannot forget. My home waits across the sea. My wife, my son, my kingdom, they call to me still." Calypso smiled, sad and knowing. "Then you are cursed twice, by gods and by memory." And thus began his longest captivity, not of chains or storms, but of longing, the battle between a man's heart and his fate. The waves whispered softly against the golden sands of Ogygia, a paradise of eternal spring where time itself seemed to sleep. Flowers bloomed in every hue imaginable, and the air was thick with the scent of cedar and ripe fruit. The sun never burned too fiercely. The sea never roared in anger. Yet for Odysseus, this island of beauty was a cage, though its shores were fair and its mistress kind. His heart was chained to a home far beyond the horizon. Calypso's cave stood deep within a grove of cypress and olive trees, veiled by vines that shimmered like emeralds inside. The walls glowed with the light of hidden gems, and the sound of running water echoed through the hollow. There she lived, Calypso, the nymph of immortal grace. Her eyes held the calm of deep oceans and the sorrow of endless years. When she found Odysseus broken on the shore, she had nursed him with care. She gave him nectar to drink and clothed him in woven silk. His strength returned, but his spirit remained restless. Each day she would sing by the loom, her voice flowing like honey through the air. And each day Odysseus would sit upon a rock at the edge of the sea, staring toward the west where Ithaca lay hidden by gods and distance. She would come to him, her feet silent on the sand. "Why do you mourn the life that only brought you pain?" she would ask gently. "Here you have peace. Stay with me, and I shall make you immortal. You will never age, never suffer again." But Odysseus would answer with quiet sorrow, "Peace is sweet, lady of the isle, but not when bought with the loss of one's soul. I am mortal. My heart belongs to time, to struggle, to the earth that made me. My wife weaves her grief into cloth. My son grows into a man without knowing his father. How can I rest while they wait? Calypso's face would darken with something like pain. You speak of love as though it is a gift, she said once, but love is a wound that never heals. You could be free of it here. Yet she saw the truth in his eyes, a truth that even the gods could not erase. 7 years passed like mist through fingers. Seasons did not change, yet Odysseus felt them in his soul. His beard grew thick, his eyes lined with salt and sorrow. He built small boats that the waves destroyed, prayed to gods who remained silent, and sang to the sea as though it might carry his voice home. Calypso watched him, torn between love and fury. She could give him everything except the one thing he desired most, freedom. Then one day the heavens stirred. Hermes, messenger of the gods, descended in a shimmer of gold, his winged sandals barely touching the island. Calypso, sensing his arrival, greeted him with grace but weariness. You come from Olympus, she said. What errand brings you to my lonely isle? Hermes's tone was soft but firm. Zeus commands that you let the mortal go. It is not his fate to dwell here. He must return to his home, though hardship yet awaits him. Calypso's heart filled with bitter laughter. The gods are cruel indeed, she said. They envy us when we love a mortal, yet they sow their own loves across the earth. Why must my heart be denied while there's wonder? Free. Hermes said nothing. He only bowed his head and vanished in light. Calypso stood alone, her beauty dimmed by grief. That evening, she found Odysseus by the sea, as always. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Mortal man, your wish has been granted. The gods have spoken, you are free to go. For a long time, he said nothing. Gratitude warred with pity in his heart. You have been kind beyond measure, he said at last. If I could love another, perhaps I would have loved you. She smiled faintly, though tears shone in her eyes. Go then, Odysseus of Ithaca. Build your raft. The sea may yet devour you, but your heart will be your own. For days he labored, felling trees, shaping them into a raft, strong enough to endure Poseidon's rage. Calypso brought him tools and cloth for a sail. When it was done, she placed before him food and water, and a gentle breeze rose to guide him forth. At dawn, he stood by the shore. She walked beside him one last time, her eyes glimmering with both love and sorrow. I could make you immortal still, she whispered. Stay, and all your pain will end. He looked at her with quiet strength. To live without pain is not life, but forgetting. I thank you, goddess, but I choose the sea. She nodded, stepping back as he pushed the raft into the surf. The waves lifted it gently, carrying him from her sight. She watched until he vanished beyond the horizon, her tears falling like pearls into the sea. The wind sang softly, and the island grew silent again. But freedom came with a price. No sooner had he left Ogygia than the sea god Poseidon saw him. The earth-shaker's wrath had not cooled. He rose from the depths, his eyes like storm clouds. So, the mortal defies me still, he thundered. No god, no nymph shall save him now. The sky blackened. Winds howled. The waves reared high as mountains, smashing against the tiny raft. Odysseus clung to the timbers, his knuckles white. Lightning flashed. The sea swallowed him whole, dragging him down into darkness. He fought to breathe, to see, to live. His raft shattered, his strength faded. But fate, cruel and merciful, sent aid again. From the foam rose Ino, the sea goddess once mortal, who pitied his suffering. She cast her veil to him and cried, Cast off your raft, brave man, and swim. The gods are not all your enemies. This veil shall keep you from the depths. Trust the sea, though it hungers for you. Odysseus obeyed, clinging to the veil as the waves hurled him toward a distant shore. For 2 days and nights he battled the sea, his body bruised, his mind weary, but his will unbroken. At last he saw land, the shores of Phaeocia, a realm of noble sailors and peace. He crawled onto the sand, half dead, his limbs trembling. Above him, dawn spread its light once more. The storm was gone. The sea murmured softly, almost kindly, as if exhausted by its own fury. He lay there, breathing the scent of earth again, whispering a single word between gasps, Ithaca. Though he had not yet reached it, his journey was nearer than ever. The sun rose softly over the green shores of Phaeocia, where the waves rolled gentle and kind. Unlike the wrathful seas he had known before, Odysseus lay hidden beneath a grove of olive trees, his body battered, his spirit worn but unbroken. The scent of the earth filled his lungs, the first breath of peace. After years of storm and sorrow, sleep claimed him there, deep and dreamless, while the tide whispered secrets of distant lands. When he awoke, the sky was bright and full of birdsong. Laughter drifted through the air, light, human, joyful. Following the sound, Odysseus crept toward a meadow where a river met the sea. There, a group of maidens played, their white garments fluttering like wings in the breeze. Among them was one who shone brighter than all, Nausicaa, daughter of King Alcinous, fair and noble, with the calm grace of dawn itself. As they washed their linens in the river and let them dry beneath the sun, one of the balls they played with fell near the place where Odysseus lay hidden. Startled awake, he rose from the thicket, naked, sea-worn, his hair tangled, his face shadowed by fatigue and years of grief. The maidens shrieked and fled, all except Nausicaa, whose courage matched her beauty. She stood still, though her heart trembled as the stranger bowed low before her. "Lady," he said, his voice rough from salt and silence, "whether you are goddess or mortal, I beg your mercy. I have suffered greatly and come from the sea with nothing but my life. Grant me a cloth to cover my shame, and a word to guide me to those who rule this land." Nausicaa's eyes softened. She saw not a beggar, but a man of noble bearing hidden beneath hardship. "Stranger," she said gently, "the gods do not send such trials to those unworthy of them. You shall have clothing, food, and safety. My father, King Alcinous, is wise and kind. If your heart is just, you will find welcome here." She called her maidens back, and they came timidly, bringing him fine garments and oil for his skin. They gave him bread and wine, and when he had washed away the salt of the sea, he stood tall once more, no longer a castaway, but a hero reborn. "Follow behind me," Nausicaa said. "It is not fitting that we walk together into the city, for tongues will wag. When you reach the palace, seek my mother first, Queen Erit, for her heart is kind. And if she favors you, none shall deny you aid." Odysseus bowed deeply. "You have the wisdom of Athena herself," he said. "May the gods bless you for your mercy." That evening, he entered the shining city of the Phaeacians, a realm unlike any he had seen. The walls gleamed with bronze. The streets were paved with smooth stone. Lamps of gold burned without flame, and music echoed from every hall. He paused before the palace where light spilled through wide doors, and the sound of laughter and feasting filled the air. Entering humbly, Odysseus walked straight to Queen Erit and fell at her knees. The hall grew silent. The nobles watched, astonished, as the stranger clasped her hands. "Queen," he said softly, "I come as a wanderer from distant seas, a man broken by gods and fate. I beg your grace and the aid of your people." For a long moment, none spoke. Then Erit looked into his eyes deep and weary, but shining with truth. "Rise, stranger," she said kindly. "You shall find no enemy here. Whoever you are safe under our roof." King Alcinous nodded. "Be seated, guest of honor. Eat, drink, and rest. When your strength returns, you shall tell us your name and your story." They set food before him. Bread soft as clouds, roasted meats, wine red as sunset. Odysseus ate in silence, his heart heavy with memories. When the meal ended, Alcinous spoke again. "You seem no ordinary man. The gods have tested you sorely. Tell us your journey, that we may learn of the world beyond our shores." And so, before the court of Phaeacia, Odysseus began to speak of Troy's fires, of the Cyclops' cave, of Circe's spells, the land of the dead, the siren's song, and the wrath of Helios. His voice was low but steady, carrying the weight of years and the ache of loss. The hall listened, spellbound. Even the musicians fell silent, and the fire itself seemed to lean closer to hear. When he finished, Alcinous' eyes shone with admiration. "Truly, you are Odysseus of Ithaca, the man of many trials. You have suffered enough. It is the will of the gods that you return home. Tomorrow, our best ship shall carry you there. You shall rest at last." That night, Odysseus lay in a bed of soft linen and dreamed of Ithaca, of Penelope's quiet grace, of Telemachus's boyish laughter, of the olive tree beneath which his house stood. For the first time in years, he believed he might see them again. At dawn, the Phaeacians gathered by the harbour. The finest ship awaited, its hull gleaming like polished stone. The sailors loaded gifts of gold, silver, and cloth, treasures fit for a king. Odysseus stepped aboard, his heart pounding with hope. As the oars dipped into the sea, the city faded behind him. The wind was gentle, the sky clear. The ship glided over the waves like a dream. Odysseus felt sleep pull at him, deep and peaceful. He surrendered to it, his last thought a whisper, Penelope. The gods watched in silence as he slept, and Poseidon, still bitter, gazed from afar. Yet even the sea god knew the end of the wanderer's suffering drew near. For at long last, Ithaca waited beyond the horizon, patient and proud. The night sea carried him gently, rocking him as a mother rocks a child. The stars above glittered like 1,000 silent promises, and Odysseus, wrapped in a deep enchanted sleep, knew neither fear nor storm. The ship glided smooth as thought, guided by the hands of the Phaeacian sailors, men beloved of the gods, whose craft no wave could hinder. The wind sang softly in the sails, and for the first time in endless years, peace lay upon him. When dawn came, the horizon blushed gold. The ship had already reached the shores of Ithaca, his homeland, the land of olive trees and whispering hills, the island for which he had fought, wandered, and wept. The sailors, silent and reverent, carried him sleeping from the deck to the sand. They laid him beneath a spreading olive tree, and placed beside him the gifts of King Alcinous, bronze, gold, and woven garments fine as moonlight. The tide lapped gently at the shore, and the men, with quiet hearts, pushed off again, vanishing into the morning mist. When Odysseus awoke, the air smelled of thyme and salt. The sea murmured softly behind him. He sat up slowly, his mind hazy with dreams. The cliffs were familiar, the light, the distant cry of gulls, and yet something in him feared to believe. "Is this a trick?" he whispered. "Do the gods mock me still?" His eyes scanned the land, but the years had changed Ithaca. The trees had grown, the paths seemed strange, and the silence was thick. As doubt filled him, a figure appeared, a young shepherd with bright eyes and a calm smile. He carried a staff and walked with easy grace. "Good day, stranger," said the youth. "You seem troubled. What land do you seek?" Odysseus, cautious as ever, measured his words. "I am far from home, I think," he said. "Tell me, what country is this, and who rules here?" The shepherd laughed softly, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "You stand upon Ithaca, land of cunning men and faithful hearts. Its king is said to be Odysseus, though he has been long lost to the sea." At that, Odysseus's heart leapt, but he mastered his joy. "Ithaca," he whispered. After all these years, the youth smiled wider, and the air round him shimmered. His form changed, the shepherd vanished, and in his place stood Athena, grey-eyed and radiant, her armour flashing with divine light. "Odysseus," she said warmly, "my clever one, my favourite among men. I have watched your trials, your courage, your pain. At last you are home." He bowed low, tears burning his eyes. "Goddess, if not for you, I would have perished 1,000 times. Tell me, what waits for me now? Is my house still mine? Is Penelope faithful?" Athena's gaze softened. "Your wife has been steadfast as a rock, your son grown brave as his father, but your halls are not yours yet. Arrogant suitors feast within, devouring your goods, seeking your queen's hand. You must reclaim your home, not as a king returned, but as a beggar in disguise. Only then shall justice bloom." Odysseus's jaw tightened. "I will do as you command," he said, "for I have learned that the gods win victory from patience, not pride." Athena touched his shoulder, and a shimmer of magic flowed through him. His skin withered, his hair turned grey, his clothing became tattered, no longer a warrior, but a weary old man. "Now go," said the goddess. "Find the swineherd Eumaeus loyal still, and there begin your return." Then she vanished in a breath of wind, and the olive trees rustled as though whispering her name. Odysseus, bent and disguised, made his way through the hills. The path was rough, but his heart beat strong with purpose. At last, he came to a small hut by the forest's edge where smoke rose from a humble fire. The smell of roasting meat drifted through the air, and beside the pens a man worked, broad-shouldered, weathered, kind-eyed. It was Eumaeus, his faithful servant, though he did not recognize the stranger who approached. "Peace to you, old traveler," said Eumaeus kindly. "The world is cruel to wanderers, but you are welcome here. Sit by the fire and eat." Odysseus's eyes filled with gratitude. "You are generous, indeed," he said. "May the gods reward your kindness. Tell me, friend, what of your master, the one called Odysseus? Does he yet live?" Eumaeus sighed, staring into the flames. "Ah, my heart aches at the name. He was a noble man, and I loved him as a father. But the sea took him, as it takes all who dream of glory. His house is overrun by greedy men, suitors who eat his food and woo his faithful wife. If he still lives, may Zeus bring him home to strike them down." Odysseus hid a smile behind his sorrow. "Perhaps he shall return," he said softly. "Fate is patient, and the gods remember those who suffer with courage." Eumaeus nodded. "If that day comes, I'll stand beside him with my spear, though I be the last." They ate together, and night fell quiet around the hut. The fire crackled, the wind sighed, and Odysseus's heart beat with fierce, silent joy, for at last he was among his own again, unseen but home. The night was calm around the swineherd's hut. The stars flickered faintly above the olive trees, and the lowing of pigs drifted like a lullaby from the pens. Odysseus sat by the hearth, his disguise of rags and age wrapped close about him. The flames painted soft gold upon his face, and his eyes, sharp still, bright with cunning, watched the shadows dance. Eumaeus, loyal as stone, spoke gently to him, telling of the suitor's cruelty, of Penelope's endless sorrow, of Telemachus, the son who had grown to manhood without a father's hand. Each word struck Odysseus like an arrow. He longed to reveal himself, to embrace the servant who had kept faith through the long years, but wisdom restrained him. The gods had taught him patience. He knew now that victory ripens slowly, like fruit upon the bough. So he listened, nodding, and spoke little. At dawn, Athena's light touched the sky. The goddess herself came once more, unseen to mortal eyes, her voice whispering in the air. "Odysseus, the time has come. Your son is near. He returns from his journey to Pylos and Sparta, where he sought word of you. Eumaeus will bring him here, and when you meet, reveal yourself. But speak softly, many eyes are treacherous still." Her voice faded like wind through reeds, and Odysseus's heart began to pound. Soon after, footsteps sounded upon the path. Eumaeus entered, his face lit with joy. "My lord," he said to the disguised wanderer, "I must go to the city. Your son Telemachus has returned. I will bring him here, for he fears the suitor's spies." Odysseus smiled faintly. "Go then, friend," he said. "The gods favor the faithful." Hours passed, and the forest murmured softly. Then came voices, one old, one young. Odysseus lifted his head as Eumaeus entered again, followed by a tall youth with clear eyes, dark curls, and the proud grace of a born king. Telemachus stepped into the hut, and the old man disguised as a beggar rose slowly to greet him. "Welcome, traveler," said Telemachus kindly. "Eumaeus tells me you are in need. Rest and eat, though these are humble walls." Odysseus studied his son, the way he stood, the steady gaze, the shadow of his own youth reborn. Emotion swelled in his chest, but he bowed low. "You have a noble heart, young lord," he said. "May the gods guard your home and grant your father's safe return." At the mention of his father, Telemachus's eyes darkened. "If only the gods would," he murmured. "But he is gone. I have prayed, searched, hoped, and found only silence." In that moment, Athena appeared once more, unseen to Telemachus, but bright before Odysseus. She nodded once. "Now," she whispered. Light shimmered across the hut. The rags fell away, the grey faded from his hair, and the strength of kings returned to his frame. Telemachus gasped, stepping back as the beggar vanished, and in his place stood Odysseus, tall, proud, his eyes burning with tears. "Father," cried the young man, trembling. "My son," said Odysseus, his voice thick with love. "I am here. I am home." They embraced fiercely as years of longing dissolved between them. Eumaeus wept beside them, covering his face with joy. The gods had granted what no man dared hope. the reunion of father and son. When their hearts were steady, Odysseus spoke low. "Listen, Telemachus, I am returned, but danger still walks our halls. The suitors feast in my house, plotting my wife's heart and our death. We must strike them down, not with rage, but with cunning." Telemachus's jaw set. "Tell me what to do, father." Odysseus's eyes gleamed with old fire. "Tomorrow, I will go to the palace as a beggar. You must bear the insult of the suitors, endure their mockery, and speak nothing. Hide our secret well. When the time comes, I will signal you, and then we strike together." They planned deep into the night. Every move, every word, every glance would matter. Athena, watching from the shadows, smiled in quiet pride. The blood of heroes flowed in both men, one seasoned by trial, the other untested but strong. When morning came, the sky was washed in gold. Odysseus took his staff and set out toward the city. The paths of Ithaca felt strange beneath his feet, yet his heart knew every rock, every breeze. The town was loud with laughter, the palace bright with song, false joy built upon theft. As he entered, men jeered at him. They saw only a ragged beggar, not the storm that walked among them. But Penelope, hearing whispers of a strange old traveler who spoke with the wisdom of kings, felt her heart stir. She sent word to bring him before her, though she did not yet know that the wanderer she summoned was the husband she had mourned for 20 long years. And thus, beneath the calm surface of the day, the last great act of Odysseus' story began to take shape, silent, patient, deadly. The streets of Ithaca were alive with sound as Odysseus, cloaked in rags, walked through them. The scent of bread and roasted meat drifted from the palace, mocking the hunger in his belly. His eyes, though shadowed by age and dust, gleamed with quiet fire. Each step was a heartbeat closer to reclaiming all that had been stolen from him, his crown, his home, his peace. Within the great hall, laughter rang loud and cruel. The suitors, proud, drunken, and arrogant, lounged on Odysseus's couches, drank from his goblets, and mocked the servants who once bowed to their rightful lord. They believed the king of Ithaca was long dead, swallowed by the endless sea. They were wrong. As Odysseus entered, a hush fell over the hall. Some sneered, others laughed outright. Antinous, boldest and most wicked of the suitors, sneered. "What beggar dares enter this hall unbidden? Throw him scraps, if he can chew them." Odysseus bowed low, playing his part. "A poor man seeks only kindness," he said, voice calm, eyes downcast, "and perhaps a word with your queen, whose fame reaches even the farthest shores." Antinous scowled and flung a stool at him. It struck Odysseus's shoulder, and the hall erupted in laughter. But the king said nothing. His fury burned cold, sharp as iron. He looked up only once, his gaze meeting that of Telemachus, who sat silent among the men. For an instant, father and son shared understanding. The time was not yet ripe. Later that night, Penelope descended from her chamber. Her face was pale but regal, her eyes weary yet bright with wisdom. She had endured the suitors, endless pursuit with the grace of a queen and the patience of a saint. When she saw the stranger by the fire, something within her stirred, a whisper of recognition. Though she did not understand why, "Stranger," she said softly, "you have suffered much. Tell me, have you heard aught of my husband Odysseus?" Odysseus, his heart aching, spoke with careful sorrow. "Lady, I have. I met him once, long ago. He was alive when last I saw him, strong of heart and sharp of mind. If the gods are just, he still walks beneath the sun." Tears filled Penelope's eyes. "You speak as though you knew him well. He was kind, yet cunning, brave, yet gentle. My nights are haunted by his memory." Odysseus bowed his head, his throat tight. "He will return, my lady. Even the sea cannot drown such a spirit." She smiled faintly, wiping her tears. "You speak with hope, old one. Perhaps the gods sent you for comfort." She turned to her maids. "Give him a bed, food, and clean water. He shall not sleep hungry under my roof." And so he stayed, unseen in his own home, watching the suitors plot and boast. His eyes never rested, every insult remembered, every arrogance measured. Athena, invisible beside him, whispered strategy and calm into his ear. That night, he met an old friend, Argos, his dog. The creature lay upon the dung heap by the gates, grey with age, half blind, half dead. But when Odysseus approached, even disguised in rags, the dog's ears twitched. His tail thumped once. He knew. Tears burned Odysseus's eyes as he knelt. "Old friend," he whispered, "you still wait." Argos lifted his head, sighed once, and closed his eyes forever. The faithful heart had waited 20 years and died content. Odysseus rose. Filled with quiet rage, the suitors would answer for every cruelty. That night, as the palace slept, Odysseus and Telemachus gathered the weapons. They took down the spears and shields from the walls, hiding them under Athena's watchful eye. The goddess herself dimmed the lamps, cloaking them in shadow. No one saw, no one heard. When dawn returned, Penelope appeared before the suitors with calm dignity. "Lords," she said, "I cannot delay you longer. Tomorrow I shall choose a husband, but he must prove his strength as Odysseus once did. Here is his bow. Let the man who can string it and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads take my hand." Laughter roared through the hall. None could imagine such a feat. The bow of Odysseus was mighty, a weapon only the true king could bend. One by one, the suitors tried and failed. The string would not yield. At last, the beggar spoke. "Permit me, my lady. Let an old man test his hand for sport, if nothing more." The suitors jeered. "You? Your bones would snap." But Penelope, feeling something in her heart stir once more, nodded gently. "Let him try. The gods decide the worth of men." Odysseus took the bow. The wood felt warm in his hands, the weight of memory, the music of home. With ease and silence, he strung it in one motion. The suitors gasped. Then, taking an arrow, he drew it back and released. The shaft flew true, straight through the 12 axe heads, humming like fate itself. The hall fell still. Odysseus turned slowly, his eyes bright with terrible calm. His disguise shimmered away, and the king of Ithaca stood revealed, fierce, unbroken, radiant with vengeance. "Dogs," he said, voice ringing through the hall, "you who devoured my home and shamed my name. The hunt is ended." And with that, the storm he had carried for 20 years broke loose. The air in the great hall turned cold, heavy as death itself. Silence stretched, the kind that comes before thunder. Every suitor froze, their laughter dying in their throats. The beggar was gone. In his place stood Odysseus, king of Ithaca, tall, fierce, and blazing with righteous fury. His eyes gleamed like steel catching fire, his voice deep and terrible as the sea. "You have feasted long upon my table," he said, his tone calm but deadly. "You have stolen my wine, my bread, my servant's honor. You have sought to take my wife and defile my house. For that, there can be no mercy." Antinous, still clutching his goblet, sneered. "You lie. You are no king, just a madman clothed in dust." Odysseus smiled, a hard, cold smile. He notched an arrow and let it fly. The shaft struck Antinous in the throat before he could speak again. The goblet fell. The wine spilled like blood upon the floor, and the first of many fell silent forever. For a heartbeat, none moved. Then chaos erupted. The suitors shouted, reaching for weapons, but the racks were empty. Telemachus had hidden them all. Panic flared like wildfire. Some tried to rush the door, but it was barred. Others snatched chairs or spears from the fallen. Odysseus stood unmoving in the center of the hall, his bow singing death. Each arrow found its mark, guided by the hand of Athena. Telemachus fought beside him, swift and brave, his first battle fought not for glory, but for justice. Eumaeus and Philoetius, the loyal servants, joined the fray, their hearts blazing with love for their true king. The hall became a storm of vengeance. The sound of bowstrings snapped like lightning, and the cries of the guilty filled the air. The gods themselves seemed to watch in solemn silence. For every arrow loosed, 20 years of grief were avenged. At last, the last suitor fell, and the hall fell still. Smoke curled from the lamps, blood darkened the floor, and the scent of death mingled with victory. Odysseus stood amidst the ruin of his enemies, chest heaving, eyes fierce but weary. He had won, but at a price only he could understand. Athena appeared once more, her presence radiant and calm. "You have done what few mortals could," she said. "Your patience has become your strength, your wisdom your sword. Now cleanse your house and claim your peace." Odysseus bowed his head. Peace, he murmured. A word I have chased longer than the horizon. The faithful servants carried away the bodies, washed the floors, and rekindled the hearth. The air grew quiet again, no longer with fear, but with the weight of homecoming. Penelope, hearing the echoes of battle, descended from her chamber, trembling. Before her stood a man she had dreamed of but scarcely believed could live, scarred, older. But with eyes she knew as surely as her own soul, she stopped, afraid to hope. Stranger, she whispered, if you are truly Odysseus, give me proof. Something no eyes but ours could know. Odysseus looked at her, at the woman who had waited 20 years, weaving by day and unweaving by night, defying despair with love. He smiled softly. Our bed, Penelope, he said, no man could move it, for I built it from the trunk of a living olive tree. Its roots run deep in our chamber floor. Her breath caught. Tears spilled like light. It is you, she said, running to him. Odysseus, my lord, my love, my home. He caught her in his arms, and for the first time into decades, his heart found rest. Around them, the air seemed to breathe again. The lamps burned brighter. Even the gods watching from Olympus smiled. When dawn came, Ithaca woke to a new age. The king walked among his people, no longer the wandering warrior, but the wise ruler who had seen the world, and returned to cherish his small island kingdom. His son stood beside him, his queen beside his throne, and peace settled over the land like a long-awaited dream. Yet sometimes, when the wind whispered across the sea, Odysseus would look to the horizon, not in longing, but in remembrance. For he had learned that every journey, no matter how far, ends where the heart began. And so ended the tale of Odysseus, the man of many ways, the storm-tossed hero, the mind as sharp as his spear, the soul that defied both gods and time. His story was not merely of war and wanderings, but of endurance, love, and the undying will to find one's way home.